What if I told you that Andor's Wedding arc is a masterpiece, not just for the story, but for the hidden details that creator Tony Gilroy carefully put into every episode? For instance, the theme of unification and division we see in this arc, with both the wedding and the rebels fighting on Yavin 4, representing how rebellions must come together to have any chance of succeeding. Or the recurring theme of circles that shows up both visually and in the dialogue of this arc. These touches are deliberately placed by the filmmakers, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. And once you notice them, you can't help but wonder, why? What are the filmmakers trying to say with these touches? There's many details present in the Chandrilan Wedding arc that really unifies what Andor is trying to say. Let me show you what I mean. What's fascinating about this arc are the countless examples of unification and division we see. For example, the Chandrilan Wedding. This whole arc is based around this event, this union of two young people in marriage, and while some may think it's boring, it's actually a perfect plot point to base this arc around given what the Andor creators are trying to say about rebellion. There's many other examples of unification and division in these episodes, like how Andor gets captured by a band of rebels in episode 1, and then they start fighting amongst themselves, splitting up into two factions in the jungle. The place where Krennic, Partagaz, Dedra, and other Empire officials meet to discuss Gorman is called the Maltine Divide. Bix, Willman, and Brasso are immigrants on Mina Rao, trying to fit in or unify with the people there. Dedra and Edie meet for the first time in episode 3, and while the gathering is initially contentious, they come to an agreement that transforms Edie into a totally different person around Cyril. And then we have Mon. Poor Mon. Most of the interactions she has in this arc are divisive. First, she's at odds with Tay, who blames her and the rebels for his investments souring. Then she's at odds with Luthen, who's upset with Mon for bringing Tay into the circle in the first place. Then she's at odds with her own daughter, who basically hates her at this point. Speaking of Lita, she has a fight with her future husband on the first day of the wedding activities too. And speaking of Tay, his wife left him, which is another reason he spirals out of control. Dedra talks about how her parents were criminals, and how she grew up in an Imperial Kinderblock. And Edie talks about how Cyril's dad abandoned them when Cyril was young. Mon's assistant Erskine talks about how his father had an affair with a Gorman and how he was raised on Naboo and how much of a big scandal it was. These details perfectly highlight something that Andor creators are trying to say about rebellion, and that is, it's extremely hard to work together in a rebellion. Rebellion by its very nature is chaos, like we've established in other videos, and rebel leaders do need to have order and discipline to accomplish anything. I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy the plotline of Andor getting captured by rebels who were too busy fighting to work together, but I understand the greater point Tony Gilroy was trying to make about how difficult it is to work together in a movement that's chaotic by its very nature. Spoiler alert for Season 2, but we see this all throughout the season, whether it's the Gormans disagreeing about how to handle the Empire, or rebel leaders in the final episodes who disagree about whether to trust intel from Luthen about the Death Star. In Episode 1, Cassian tells the rebels on Yavin that he stole this TIE fighter for the rebellion, and one of them answers,
"Stolen for who?"
"For the rebellion."
"Whose rebellion?"
Last season, we listened to Saw Gerrera be apprehensive to work with anyone who didn't share his exact ideals.
"We need to pull together, Saw."
"Krieger's a separatist. Maipei's a neo-Republican. The Gorman Front, the Partisan Alliance, sectorists, human cultists, galaxy partitionists. They're lost. All of them lost."
The irony is that rebellions, which are born from chaos, need to come together to have any chance of succeeding. And the examples of division and unification in this arc showcase this point perfectly. It's here that I want to introduce a second major theme in this arc that ties directly into unification and division, which, if you've watched my other Andor videos, you know is a recurring motif already, and that's one of circles. When Cassian talks with Naya, he expresses joy at being with her as she steps into the circle of the rebellion, saying,
"This makes it worth it. Being with you, being here at the moment you step into the circle."
When Krennic briefs Empire officials at the Maltine Divide, he says that
the group in this room is of this moment. the tightest of closed circles.
When we catch up with Mon on Chandrila in episode 1, she walks around outside and is surrounded by giant arching stone circles, and as she walks around, the camera does a 360 around her, which gives a sense of her feeling disoriented. If we skip ahead to episode 3, this 360 camera movement continues, particularly when the circular DJ ball comes out. Maybe, on a meaning level, the director used 360 camera movements like this to tie into the circular design choices and circular philosophical messages of Andor. I've mentioned this in other videos, but one of the main messages of Andor is how much history repeats itself. For instance, in episode 2, Mon says to Vel,
"Everything out is new again."
She says this on a pre-wedding hike, one which her and Perrin took years ago when they got married. Mon says it was raining when they had their hike, and now it's sunny. Mon tells Lita about how her mother was drunk when she got married, and how much she hated her for that. Then, in the very moment Lita is about to get married, she finally understands why her mother was drunk. It wasn't because she didn't care, it's because she knew exactly what was happening, and tried to hide from the terror of two 15-year-olds about to enter into an arranged marriage. Then Mon gets drunk herself at the end of the wedding. More cycles and circles. As if we needed any more evidence of this motif, as soon as Lita walks out of the room to get married, a circle awaits in the center of the courtyard, which her and her future husband step into to complete the ceremony. An interesting tidbit is that the young couple steps in and moves counterclockwise. Then the four parents step in and move clockwise. I don't know whether this is on purpose, but when you think about Lita's obsession with tradition and the old ways that we see in Season 1, it makes sense that Lita moves counterclockwise, representing the turning back of time and focus on tradition, while Mon and company, who are more wise to the problematic nature of arranged marriages than they let on, move clockwise, representing more progressive or future-facing ideology. It's here we get to one of my favorite elements of this arc, which is the Shandy Merle statue that Davo gifts the new couple. These were stolen from Chandrila 25,000 years ago, and were one of 12 statues that used to stand in a local Chandrilan temple. One of 12 statues, like the 12 hours on a circular clock face. I don't know if this was intentional, but I've seen details like this placed in other films that focus on the passage of time, like Interstellar. In that movie, the ship Cooper pilots to save humanity has 12 chambers that rotate clockwise to create artificial gravity, like a clock. Time is a huge motif in that movie, and I think in the case of Andor, it's more likely than not that the creators made it 12 ancient statues, and not 4 or 8 or 27 for a reason. Symbolically, the Shandy Merle statues tie directly into this circular cyclical theme. These statues, representing Chandrilan tradition, were stolen many years ago and returned back for Lita's wedding. It came full circle. For someone who is so obsessed with Chandrilan tradition, this Shandy Merle statue is a perfect gift for Lita. Another really cool example of this circle motif is actually in the dancing scene. If you pay attention, you'll notice that most, if not everybody, dances in a circular motion on the floor. Mon herself also spins in circles as she's dancing, bless her soul. There's too many circular themes here for it to be random, and we'll see even more of this in future episodes of Season 2. A third motif from this arc that relates to all of this is home. When Andor talks to Naya about being a rebel, he tells her,
"You're coming home to yourself."
Lita's wedding happens back home on Chandrila too, and one thing I noticed was how tender Mon and Perrin were being with each other in these episodes, almost like they were reminded of when they got married and were enjoying being home together. Then we have Bix, Brasso, and Willman, who are immigrants on Minoral, separated from their home, history, and a part of themselves. And if you didn't catch it, they hang a photo of Marva right next to their radio, reminding themselves of where they come from. And then we have Erskine, who talks about how even though his father was Chandrilan, he grew up on Naboo because his father had an affair with a Gorman. He didn't even have a proper home until Mon took him in. And after 25,000 years, the Shandy Merle statue comes back home to Chandrila. When you think of home as a motif, words like comfort, family, and familiarity come to mind. Familiarity is a great word to use here, and I think that this is yet another sub-theme in this arc. It comes from a Latin word meaning intimacy or friendship, which immediately makes me think of this iconic phrase the rebels use in Season 2.
I have friends everywhere.
It's funny, there's a lot of spoken references to friendship in this arc. The rebels in the jungle on Yavin 4 tell Andor,
Your friend was not friendly. He took a shot at us.
Partagaz talks to Dedra about Luthen in Episode 2 and says,
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere, he's nowhere.
it ties into that I have friends everywhere saying so perfectly that I had to mention it. Mon asks Vel about Cinta in Episode 2, saying,
No word from your friend?
when Tay talks to Mon about his investments souring due to rebel activity, he says, I hate having to say all this, Mon, to which she replies,
Oh. To an old friend? After all you've done for me, please.
It's funny, because we get a front row seat to Mon and Tay's friendship breaking at the seams in this arc until he's finally taken out to pasture by Cinta on Luthen's orders. We talked about the word familiar. Well, another connotation of this word is family. It's interesting, because that's exactly what Cassian is trying to do at the very start of Andor. He's trying to find his sister. And intercut throughout Andor's first arc are flashbacks Cassian has to his days as a child on Kenari. He's remembering his history. Then we have Lita and Stekken getting married, officially becoming family themselves. Dedra gets separated from her parents, her family, and is raised in an Imperial kinderblock. That in and of itself represents what the Empire does so well. They separate you from your own history, making you forget where you come from, essentially wiping your slate completely clean. Nemik says that
there's a growing list of things we've known and forgotten, things they've pushed us to forget. Things like freedom.
I detailed in my Aldani video this theme of history and how much the Empire pushes you to forget your history. It's super relevant to bring it up again right here in this arc that seems so focused on home, family, history, and familiarity. Cyril, like Dedra, has a father who abandoned his mother. Interesting how both of these characters turn into key tools for the Empire in their quest for superiority. Both characters come from broken homes where connection with their own history has been severed. I was reading Nemik's manifesto while writing the script for this video, and I realized that he begins multiple paragraphs with the word remember. And when we hear him reciting his manifesto in episode 11 of season 1,
oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that.
It seems like he's gently reminding us of these things rather than shouting them from the rooftops like the rah-rah speech from Independence Day. He's gently asking us to remember, gently nudging us in that direction, because he knows how many common folk have forgotten their own history and rights due to the Empire wiping them out. This was 100% on purpose, I think, and I believe this phrase, I have friends everywhere, that we see in Season 2, and this familiar motif we see in Arc 1, is an interesting evolution of this Andor theme of remembering your history and maintaining that connection with your home, your soul, that the Empire tries to get you to forget. The Empire tries to divide people. It's no mistake that the place Krennic, Partagaz, and Dedra meet is called the Maltene Divide. Here, they talk about ways to influence public opinion and make normal people hate the gore. In summary, they're meeting at the Maltene Divide to brainstorm ways to stoke the fires of division. It's perfect writing. At the meeting, they say,
with the right ideas, planted in the right markets, in the right sequence, we can now weaponize this galactic opinion.
I don't think it's any mistake that Tony Gilroy and company, in this arc where the Empire schemes to set people against each other, have a whole storyline where Bix, Brasso, and Willman are literal immigrants on another planet that are being hunted down by Empire workers. The Andor creators are winking at us through these scenes and characters, daring us to wake up, giving us the tools to get started, showing us the way. When Andor talks to Naya in episode 1, she tells him that,
sorry, I was told not to look at you. I didn't see anything.
It's okay.
This is important because Cassian and Naya are not strangers here. Not anymore. They are both in the same circle now, seeing how they're both in the rebellion. They are as good as family, which makes what he tells her here so impactful.
This makes it worth it. Being with you, being here at the moment you step into the circle.
I suppose that's another huge theme of Andor. We are all more connected than we think. Division is the tool of an enemy that's desperately trying to maintain power. Keeping us divided is key to maintaining that power, and when we remember that we have way more in common than we think, and that we're all part of the same tapestry, it's fatal to authoritarian regimes. Nemec says this in his manifesto: "There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the size of the enemy." In this arc, Andor is alone many times. He's alone in the jungle of Yavin 4. He's alone in space, drifting by himself. And major spoiler alert for the next 10 seconds, but he will be alone at the end of Season 2 as well, when Bix goes to Mina Rao to raise their child. This is the cruel irony of rebellion. You're part of a large group of people who share a common bond that's in some ways thicker than blood, but it seems you must give up your own family or the ones you hold most dear to really commit to the cause. Mon gives up her daughter and family for the rebellion. She gives up her dearest friend, Takolma. Her relative Vel must give up her relationship with Cinta for the good of the cause. Joining the rebellion has this weird irony where, yes, you join a family, but you might lose your own in the process. Maybe for protection, and maybe because your family simply can't understand you anymore. Andor himself is an adopted child. He found his second family on Ferrix, and it's his mother and father's rebellious nature that imprinted on him and made him who he is today. The biggest weapon of the Empire is division, and it's ironic that to be a rebel, you also have to separate yourself from the system and decide to fight it. Doing this not only separates you from who you used to be, but also maybe from the people you love and who love you. Because it's you abandoning who you were to create a new identity for yourself. That's hard for many people who love you to accept, but what you do get in return is a family of fellow rebels all united by the cause, like Nemec, Melshi, or Wilman. And the connection you share with these people, united by the cause, can be stronger than blood. Rapid fire motifs. Here's a new segment I'm including in my Andor analysis detailing rapid fire motifs I found interesting, but not quite big enough to do 3 to 4 minutes of analysis on. Gorman fabric. One thing that I believe ties into these themes of connection and division is Gorman itself. In episode 1, we watch a 1950s style ad about Gorman and how they create the best clothing and fabrics in the galaxy. To make fabric, you weave together threads, combining them into something you can wear. Andor creators could have given the Gore any other kind of economy, but no, they gave them a Parisian-style culture that's heavily focused on weaving together spider silk to create amazing clothing. I think this could definitely be looked at as a motif for the rebellion. A rich tapestry of interconnected threads woven together, representing the necessity to come together as a rebellion to be successful. And spoiler alert for the next 10 seconds, but the Gorman massacre seems like this watershed moment that really sets the galaxy on fire and gives a final push to the rebellion, connecting them that much more. I definitely think there's something there, and we'll continue to analyze this in future Season 2 videos. Unlimited power. In this arc, Krennic says that the Emperor's energy initiative is very important to him to get access to
stable, unlimited power.
It reminded me of Palpatine yelling, "Unlimited power!" in Revenge of the Sith as he electrocutes Mace Windu. Then that made me think of the Narkina 5 jail, which uses electricity to keep people in line. I literally never made that connection that maybe the Narkina 5 complex runs on electricity as a callback to Emperor Palpatine himself, whose most powerful weapon is Force Lightning. I just wanted to note that because I thought it was interesting. Burning. We've talked at length about how Andor has a motif of burning running throughout the show, and that the rebels are positioned as the thing that's burning, while the Empire is cold and calculating. It definitely continues in this arc. Cassian and Naya, for one, wear Empire suits with orange coloring on the top. Mina Rao features lots of red, yellow, and orange colors, both in the architecture and in the yellow wheat that grows there. The building Bix, Wilman, and Brasso stay in basically looks like it's one big B-2 droid, and the two Empire-controlled environments we see in this episode are both frozen, dark, and depressing. If you want more insight into this theme, just check out my other Andor videos. There's so many more examples that I highlight at length in other videos. I'm going to shut up now. Let me know what details you saw in the comments down below. Next week, I'll be coming out with a video on Andor Season 2's second arc. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it.